You might have seen these clips recently on social media. Someone displays an image, some kind of video clip, and then says, "I'm a photographer and I took this image." Leaving aside the value of those images just for a moment, it got me thinking, who's allowed to say, "I'm a photographer"? That's what this video is about. I remember once reading something written on a website by a photographer, a guy I'll call Chris, and he said that if you've never worked as a stringer for magazines, hustling for work with other working photographers, you can't really call yourself a photographer. And he said that in the context of people working online, on social media, who make reviews about cameras and make videos and content around photography, and said that they couldn't have the authority to speak if they'd never done that job. To me, I thought, isn't that a really limiting view of photography and who has the authority to speak? Why do you only have authority if you've hustled to work for magazines and to get work and to get paid that way? So he valued photography and photographers, someone who's a photographer, as someone who's earned a living, who's someone who's actually earned money through their photography. Fair enough, I understand that, and a lot of us will understand that. But is that the only way, and is that a form of gatekeeping, that you're not allowed to be part of this world if you haven't done X, Y, and Z, if you haven't paid your dues in that particular way? Isn't photography supposed to be the most democratic of art forms that's accessible to everybody? And if that's the case, is that really, is the definition that Chris put on it, is that the one that we should be using? There are now so many modes of photography, so many ways of working with photography, that you can't just say that being a stringer for a magazine is the only way that you can call yourself a photographer. It's a really limited way of seeing photographers and photography. I started making this video when it was much lighter, and now it's getting really dark. I'm probably going to have to finish this later on. Anyway, let me just try this this next little bit. Still earlier, when I was at university, I was studying the history of photography, and for the very first time, I was learning about all these photographers that I had never encountered before, and I was really enthused by it, like Robert Frank and Walker Evans and Dorothea Lange and William Klein, and well, they're just the Americans, but so many interesting, invigorating photographers that I was fascinated by. And in that same class, there was a young woman who also worked as a photographer, as a wedding photographer, and she was very critical of this photography because it didn't have the sorts of aesthetic qualities that she valued in her commercial photography. To me, that also was quite a limiting, quite constricted view of who a photographer is. Obviously, all those other photographers were really valuable in the history of photography, even if in some of the examples we were looking at, they hadn't earned any money or much money from photography. To her, this person who somehow had found their way into that photography class I was doing, they also didn't have the authority to call themselves a photographer because they weren't earning money as photographers. Is that right? For her, it wasn't real photography, another form of gatekeeping. The common thread between these two examples is obviously the commercial element. The value of the photography was what people were prepared to pay for it. So this is a larger question. It's not just related to photography. When someone asks you, "What do you do?" they're invariably asking you, what is it that you do to pay the bills? I'm sure we know instinctively that the things that define us, the things that mean the most to us in our lives, are not the spreadsheets that we create or the timesheets we fill in at the end of the day. It's actually the loves that we have and the families we create and all those things. So why do we define ourselves in economic terms? What if we divorce our self-definition from the thing it is that makes us money? How about if we define ourselves by the things we're most passionate about, or bring us the most joy or the most fulfillment, whether that's taking long hikes in the mountains or making origami chess pieces or whatever it is that brings us the most joy? Why can't we define ourselves that way? Yes, I know there are some people who love their jobs and that's great for them, and yes, they can define themselves through their job if they want to, but that's a subset of people. We don't all have to be that person. We can be whoever we want to be. Many years ago, I sold many photos in different contexts to media, gallery, and as a wedding photographer. And I made a conscious decision all those years ago to stop doing that because I was really not enjoying it. It felt very stressful to be doing that job. And I was beholden to the needs of clients and to other people and not to myself. So I made a decision not to pursue photography in order to make money and to make money in other ways, and to only pursue photography for myself, for enjoyment, for things that I really wanted to do. I still don't know if that was the right decision, but it felt right at the time. But in going down this path, I helped to foster this idea that I was no longer the thing that I wanted to be, even though by doing it I could create more of what it is that I wanted to create. So it was a bit of a paradox. That is, in moving away from being a photographer in the social definition of a photographer, someone who makes money from photography, I could make more of the photographs that I wanted to do, but I was less defined as a photographer. So that's the paradox. How often do you hear someone who's just died described, he was so much more than a network administrator, he was a father and a keen gardener, and he cooked a fantastic mushroom pie, something like that. Why should we have to wait for our obituary for us to be recognized as someone more than just the thing it is that makes us money? Let your passions dictate who you are and your definition of yourself as a person. So the next time someone asks, and what do? You can with confidence say, I'm a pianist, I'm a painter, or yes, I'm a photographer. See you in the next video.